Joining me for this presentation is my wife Rebecca, my daughters Cecilia and Anna. They'll be attending to the presentation and enjoying it. You may remember from your elementary school history class the story of Paul Revere. On the dawn of the American Revolution, Paul Revere was riding his horse through the town saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." But what you may not have heard of or may not know is alleged that as he went to the next town and started saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming," the mayor told him, "Never mind, Paul, that's history." So we come into history now. I want to talk to you about living history and historical reenactment. Kind of the same, but a little bit different. I'm going to give you some definitions of both. I'm going to give you some examples of each one, and then we're going to give some displays. I've been participating in living history or historical reenactment for approximately 30 years, from the Middle Ages through the fur trade, to the Civil War, through the Indian Wars of Texas in the late 1800s. So in some sense, I guess I'm a living part of history. So, what do you want to know about it? Well, hopefully by the time I finish this presentation, you'll realize that history isn't boring. So, what is this stuff all about? Well, living history is the research and learning and presenting information from U.S. history or world history about people. Whereas historical reenactment is more about a particular event.
I'm so sorry.
One of the reenactment providers, the company is named Townsend's. This is what they have to say. Whatever it is that interests you about historical reenacting or interpretation, our first word of advice for you is to decide you can do it. Both living history and historical reenactment are called experiential hobbies. You learn by doing, and you develop from it. You research, you learn information, and then you get information to other people, like academics, like schools. You go community services, such as 4th of July. Organizations such as Scouts, or even interest groups such as Daughters of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution. When you begin by researching, you research primarily what they call primary sources, or first-hand documents, which are autobiographies or memoirs that somebody wrote. Secondary sources, or second-hand information, would be things from autobiographies or family members or ledgers. And then the last one, which is most commonly used, is other books, articles about that event. So, well, what do I decide I want to study about? Well, that's up to you. What do you want to learn about? What kind of history, what kind of a story, what kind of movie do you like to watch? What kind of event in history that was significant to you? Regardless, you learn which it is, you study your research, and your goal is to present that. In living history, you want to present that image, provide that information, and represent that person for that time. So, what about historical reenactment? Historical reenactment is more of, as it says, your reenactment of a particular event, time, activity, and history that happened. I had another quote here, goes from a company called Historical Recollections. They have to say this about historical reenactment. Historical reenactment societies provide an incredible window into how men and women lived in historical times. Living history is about replication. Living history is a representation of a time in history of people in the life, and historic reenactment is a reenacting or a replication of an event of certain times, certain places, certain people. For example, a living historian may be at a Boy Scout camporee, he may be talking about the Civil War, answering questions about the Civil War, wearing Civil War uniforms and having a display of Civil War items. Whereas somebody's doing historical reenactment, they could be doing the Battle of Gettysburg. After be doing the battles, then they finish, they come out, they have become living historians. They have a table set up, they answer questions, and they tell about the items. So, let's talk about clothing and what's called accoutrements or tools or equipment. On this table I have different items. Some are clothing, some are tools that I'm going to go through and talk about. When you're deciding what clothing to have, you need to think about, well, is it being authentic? Is it wool? Is it cotton? Is it leather? You want to try to replicate authentic as much as possible. If I was representing a mountain man, I could also need to learn about their mannerisms, their language, what they spoke. Okay, something along the lines of, I swear, as the crow flies west, there ain't no running deer in those hills. I swear to you. That could be an example of a mountain man having a conversation about not having good hunting. If I was doing a Civil War reenactment, I could present as a Confederate soldier, something along the lines of this. Honesty, Sarge, you should really ought to think about securing that berm over there, sir. By learning about history and events and people, you're better able to represent that, whether in a reenactment, such as the Battle of Gettysburg, or in living history to the Rotary Club or the community's 4th of July celebrations. Authenticity. Once again, we want to make things as real as possible. Research, research, research. Research is the meat and potatoes of living history and historical reenactment. We want to use the same items they use, the materials, as much as possible. In the event those aren't available, then you just research to decide, okay, what would have been available? How can we do this? What's a better option? A lot of times they say, well, if they had it, they would have used it. Well, I guess that's better said. If they could make it, they would have used it. History is not boring. Not boring at all. There's a lot to learn, a lot to experience, a lot to teach others about. Whether it's living history or historical reenactment, it's a great hobby. You should check into it sometime. Closing, on the website, hhhistory.com, one of the authors, Alana Rodriguez, has this to say. Reenactors may give you the sense of stepping into a movie set, but living historians can give you a sense of stepping back in time. Thank you.